There's a squirrel in your yard right now that knows more about you than you realize. Not as a random human passing through its world. It knows your routine. It knows when you're likely to step outside. It knows which door you use, how you move through the yard, and whether you're someone it considers safe. Most people assume squirrels simply react to whatever happens around them. But scientists have discovered something far more surprising. These tiny animals are constantly watching, learning, remembering, and making decisions about the humans they encounter. In other words, that squirrel isn't just seeing you, it's studying you. And what it has learned may explain why it keeps showing up again and again. In this video, you'll discover 8 signs that a squirrel has been paying close attention to you, including one behavior that shocked biologists because it suggests a remarkable level of trust. And stay until the end, because the final sign reveals something many people have experienced, but few can explain. Sometimes, a squirrel doesn't just visit a yard, it chooses a person. Let's begin. Sign number 1. They were waiting before you arrived. Have you ever looked out your window and noticed a squirrel already sitting on the fence, the tree branch, or the edge of your lawn before you've even stepped outside? At first, it feels like a coincidence. But what if it isn't? Why are they already there before you even open the door? Scientists have discovered that squirrels possess remarkable spatial memory. They build detailed mental maps of their territory, remembering where food is hidden, where escape routes are located, and even where important events tend to happen. But their memory isn't just about places, it's also about time. If you usually step outside around the same hour each morning, the squirrels in your yard may begin to anticipate your arrival. Over days, weeks, and months, your routine becomes part of their understanding of the world. Most people assume squirrels simply react to what happens around them. In reality, many are predicting. By the time you reach the door, a squirrel may already be positioned nearby because its internal clock has told it that you're about to appear, and that means something remarkable. You are no longer just another human passing through. You have become part of its daily map of the world. Sign number 2. They know the difference between you and everyone else. If squirrels have already learned your schedule, the next question becomes even stranger. Do they actually know who you are? The answer, according to researchers, is yes. The next time you're in your yard, pay attention to how squirrels react when a stranger enters the same space. Most will immediately become cautious. They may freeze against a tree trunk, retreat to higher branches, or stop whatever they're doing to carefully watch the unfamiliar person. But when you appear, the reaction is often very different. Some squirrels barely move at all. Others simply glance in your direction before continuing to forage. A few may even remain exactly where they are. Why? Because they already know you. Studies have shown that squirrels can distinguish between individual humans and adjust their behavior based on past experiences. A person who has consistently behaved in a calm, non-threatening way becomes stored in a different category than an unknown visitor. Think about how many people a squirrel sees every year. Yet it still remembers you. That alone is remarkable. Trust is not something wild animals give away freely. It is earned through countless small encounters. And somewhere along the way, a squirrel in your yard decided that you are different from everyone else. Sign number 3. The moment they stop and stare. Perhaps you've experienced this before. You're standing quietly in your yard when a squirrel suddenly stops what it's doing. It lifts its head. You look at the squirrel looks back. And for a few seconds, neither moves. It's a strangely memorable moment. Not because the squirrel seems frightened, but because it appears focused, almost curious. Most people assume that wild animals avoid eye contact whenever possible. But squirrels will sometimes pause and deliberately study a familiar human, especially when something seems different. Maybe you're wearing a new hat. Maybe you're carrying an object they haven't seen before. Maybe you're simply standing still longer than usual. Researchers and naturalists often describe this behavior as investigative observation. The squirrel isn't just seeing you. It's gathering information. That makes this moment more significant than it first appears. Looking directly at something requires attention, and attention is valuable in the wild. Every second spent watching you is a second not spent scanning for predators. So when a squirrel repeatedly stops and studies your face, it suggests something important. It has already decided you're worth paying attention to. And every visit helps it refine what it thinks it knows about you. Sign number 4. Why they follow your movements. Once you start noticing squirrels, you may discover something even stranger. They seem to follow you. Not by running behind you, of course, but as you move through the yard, they keep adjusting their position to keep you in sight. Walk from the back door to the garden, and a squirrel on a nearby tree may suddenly turn toward you. Move to another corner of the yard, and one sitting on a fence post may stop what it's doing and watch. Even squirrels halfway up a tree often shift around the trunk, just enough to maintain a clear view. Scientists refer to this as subject tracking. It's a behavior animals use to monitor individuals that matter within their environment. Many people assume that being watched automatically means an animal sees them as a threat. But that's not always true. Sometimes it means the opposite. A squirrel that has already classified you as safe still pays attention because your behavior provides useful information. If you suddenly act differently, move unusually fast, or enter an area you rarely visit, it wants to know. Being watched doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it means importance. In the squirrel's world, you have become someone worth keeping an eye on. Up to this point, everything we've discussed could be explained by observation. A squirrel learns your schedule. It recognizes your face. It watches your movements and adjusts its behavior accordingly. That's impressive enough. But the next sign reveals something far more surprising. Because squirrels don't just learn from their own experiences. They learn from each other. And that means your reputation may be spreading through the yard in ways you never imagined. Sign number 5. Your reputation has spread through the yard. This may be the hardest sign to believe. What if the squirrels in your yard know about you before they've ever interacted with you directly? As strange as it sounds, that's exactly what researchers studying animal behavior have found. Squirrels are constantly watching one another. Younger squirrels learn by observing older, more experienced individuals. If an experienced squirrel remains calm around a particular person, younger squirrels often adjust their own behavior accordingly. In other words, they don't have to learn everything firsthand. They can learn from each other. And squirrels aren't the only ones paying attention. Many backyard animals live in a surprisingly connected information network. Birds listen to squirrel alarm calls. Squirrels respond to the warnings of birds. Everyone is constantly gathering clues about what is safe and what isn't. Over time, your behavior becomes part of that shared knowledge. If you consistently move through your yard without causing trouble, the message spreads. You have a reputation, not among people, among wildlife. And perhaps that's why the animals in your yard seem so comfortable carrying on with their lives when you appear. To them, you are no longer an unknown presence that needs to be evaluated. You are a familiar part of the landscape, someone the neighborhood has quietly agreed can be trusted. But everything we've discussed so far is still about observation and communication. The next sign goes much further. Because this is the moment a squirrel reveals whether it truly trusts you. Sign number 6, the trust test that shocked biologists. This is the sign that surprised researchers the most. To understand why, you first need to know something remarkable about squirrels. They don't just hide food, they deceive. Every autumn, a squirrel may bury hundreds or even thousands of nuts across its territory. Those hidden food caches can mean the difference between survival and starvation during the winter months. Protecting them is incredibly important, and squirrels have developed a fascinating strategy. When they realize another squirrel is watching, they will sometimes perform what scientists call a fake cache. They dig a hole, pretend to place food inside, carefully cover it up, and then walk away with the nut still hidden in their mouth. In other words, squirrels literally lie to protect their food. Why? Because they understand that another animal might be observing them and planning to steal from them later. That level of deception stunned biologists because it suggests a surprisingly sophisticated awareness of what another creature might know. Now here's where things become truly interesting. If a squirrel regularly buries food while you're standing nearby, fully aware that you're watching, it isn't behaving the same way. It isn't creating a fake cache. It isn't trying to hide its actions. Instead, it is openly placing something valuable into the ground in your presence. Think about what that means. A squirrel that spends its life guarding food from potential thieves has reached a conclusion about you. It has decided you are not one of them. That tiny animal has examined the evidence, watched your behavior over time, and quietly placed you into a category very few creatures ever reach. Safe. And for a wild animal, trust doesn't get much bigger than that. Sign number 7. The silence around you means something. Most people pay attention to what animals do, but sometimes the most important signal is what they stop doing. Squirrels are surprisingly vocal animals. They use a variety of alarm calls to warn each other about potential threats, whether it's a hawk circling overhead, a roaming cat, or an unfamiliar person entering their territory. In a yard where a human is considered dangerous, those warnings often appear immediately. Squirrels freeze, chatter loudly, flick their tails, and alert the entire neighborhood that something requires attention. But what happens when you step outside and none of that occurs? The squirrels keep foraging. They remain on the fence. They continue climbing trees or searching for food as if nothing has changed. That absence of alarm is meaningful. It tells you that your presence no longer triggers a threat response. After countless observations, the squirrels have already made their assessment. You are familiar. You are predictable. You are safe. Sometimes trust is measured not by what animals do, but by what they stop doing. And when the warning calls fade, when the yard continues its normal rhythm after you appear, you're hearing something remarkable. Not a message spoken aloud, but a quiet verdict delivered by the wildlife around you. You belong here. Sign number 8, the squirrel that chose you. This final sign is the one that stays with people the longest. Because sometimes there is one squirrel that seems different from all the others. It appears in the same place at the same time, day after day. You begin to recognize it. Maybe it has a nick in one ear. Maybe its tail is a little lighter. Maybe it simply moves in a way that's unmistakably familiar. And before long, you realize something surprising. You're looking for it too. Stories like this are incredibly common. A widow sits on her porch each morning with a cup of coffee, and the same squirrel appears on the fence nearby. A retired man scattering birdseed notices one squirrel that always arrives first. Someone living alone begins recognizing a familiar face among the wildlife that visits their yard. Over time, these small encounters become part of a daily routine. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean the squirrel understands human loneliness, grief, or loss. It doesn't know what you're going through. But it does know you. It remembers you. Science has shown that squirrels can recognize individual humans, remember them for long periods, and develop preferences based on repeated experiences. Out of all the people who pass through its territory, it may become noticeably more comfortable around one particular person. You. And perhaps that's why these relationships feel meaningful. Not because they're magical, not because the squirrel has some secret message to deliver, but because in a world where so much comes and goes, there is something comforting about being remembered. A small wild animal keeps returning, season after season, year after year, because your presence has become part of its world. And sometimes, being remembered matters more than we realize. So if a squirrel keeps visiting your yard, it probably isn't bringing a secret message. It isn't magic, and it isn't a sign from the universe. The truth is both simpler and, in many ways, more remarkable. A wild animal has spent weeks, months, or even years observing you. It has watched your routines, learned your habits, measured your behavior, and quietly decided whether you belong in its world. That's not something nature gives away lightly. Trust is one of the most valuable things a wild creature possesses. And when a squirrel stops treating you as a potential threat, when it remembers you, returns to your yard, and carries on with its life in your presence, it has made a decision. You are safe, you are familiar, you belong, and that may be one of the highest compliments a wild animal can ever offer. Before we go, I'd love to hear your story. Has a squirrel ever seemed to recognize you? Or has there been another animal that kept returning to your yard, your porch, or your daily routine? What did it look like, and how long did that connection last? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.